Hey sports fans, today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite games of 2025, Rematch. But first, I have a little bit of a confession to make. Despite spending endless hours consuming numerous licensed and unlicensed sports games for decades, I don't really care about sports. Like, at all. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not one of those guys ironically yelling sports ball. I'm a pro wrestling fan. Who am I to judge? But if a major event is on TV, you'll probably find me playing video games or watching anime. Sometimes even sports anime. But regular sports? Nah, not my style. Still, I've always been a great fan of sports video games. Yes, including the big boys Madden, Football Club, and NBA 2K. Some years are good, some years are meh. But a couple of weekends ago, I decided to download the brand new soccer game, or football game for our friends across the pond, Rematch by Slow Clap. And to say it's been a complete time sink would be an understatement. Match after match, pass after pass, goal after goal. The hours simply melted away. And it reminded me of classic arcade sports games. Or really, it reminded me what arcade sports games are supposed to be. Before I knew it, I was having flashbacks to NBA Jam. Now I know that's a big comparison, especially for a game that, let's be honest, didn't review all that strongly. But I'm gonna give it the old hard sell anyway, because in my opinion, Rematch feels exactly like what the sports genre has been missing. These days, sports games are extremely complex and skill-based, but it didn't always used to be that way. In the classic days of Atari, this was a boxing match, and we liked it. There's been this idea, at least in retrospect, that old sports games were limited based on the technology that existed. And sure, they weren't going to be rocking Rematch's cartoony realism in 3D, but they were chasing instant legibility for the arcade crowd. Slap in a quarter and play a game you already understand. In fact, I've always felt boxing was really an evolution of Pong, itself another sports game. Heck, Table Tennis for Two is arguably the first video game ever. Sports and tech have always been connected. Now, Rematch is significantly more complicated than those games of yesteryear, and that's because games in general are more complicated today, at least on the surface. Because despite constant sloppy slides and tackles, you'll never find a ref throwing a red card, a real callback to the zany days of the punching basketball players of arch rivals, the robot baseball mayhem of Base Wars, where the robots fought to the death, and of course the utter brutality of NFL Blitz, and the non-stop shoving of NBA Jam. And by the way, if anyone at EA is watching this, guys, please bring back Mutant League. Just look at those animations. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is arcade sports games often make defense extremely fun while making offense more skillful and challenging. And Rematch's method is essentially the third-person shooter. Much like the classics adapted 2D platformers and graphics imitating Warner Brothers cartoons, Rematch is translating the nuances of soccer into a familiar template. And I know, it's cliche, but it has a feeling not unlike Fortnite with building momentum. Heck, it's even using Epic's Unreal Engine. Shots are taken with the right trigger, and targeting for the ground or air makes all the difference. Passes are guided by player movement, not the camera. And yes, you get a sprint gauge that soups up all your actions at the cost of ball control. Ironically, this is nothing like the ever-popular soccer-influenced Rocket League. That game brilliantly merged driving and soccer and remains an all-time arcade sports classic in my book. But that felt more akin to the indie era of sports games. You know, having humorous combinations. Rematch, on the other hand, doesn't allow for lone wolves, and no, you can't drive up the ceiling. You are not the great observer. Much like NBA Jam, you're a single player within a game. In fact, despite the friendly camera and movement, the actual play-to-play of simply passing the ball to a teammate can be quite challenging. But when it succeeds, Rematch rewards players with points. Same with your interceptions. And those totals go to your individual overall player score, unlocking aesthetics. It's such a simple but effective way of reinforcing teamwork, and that becomes infectious. Answer me this. What other game do you see a super customized avatar and think, oh wow, they must be really good at teamwork? How many sports games give you an edge with mouse and keyboard? So far, I've only experienced that in Rematch. In fact, I would argue teamwork is the cornerstone of its design, and what keeps it so darn addictive. The D-pad communications are another great example of this. Players can say thanks, sorry, good job, and we got this, in addition to play specifics. I suppose some people can use it sarcastically, but by limiting communication to these four messages, players can recognize and celebrate each other's successes, lament their failures, and ultimately say, we got this. And let me just say, if you're playing with a team that mashes good job to your goalies for successful blocks, or your fellow sweeper for a goal, until your chat gets disabled for spam, you're gonna have a great time with complete strangers, regardless of what the final score is. Again, this feels like the bygone era of placing quarters on NBA Jam cabinets and playing with strangers. And that's just it. I love simulation sports games, but I need contrast. I love to see how each generation adds new realism. In fact, I would go so far to say the best simulations are the ones where you never actually play the sport, like Football Manager. But I think we've all experienced the awkward online play of sitting through a game you have absolutely no chance of winning, and it's not even halfway done? Where's the fun in that? Meanwhile, on Rematch, I'm getting shut out by the mercy rule and still blissfully smashing affirming words to complete strangers. Yeah, we lost, but we had a few good passes. And the weirdest part? They're doing it back. But this begs the question, if arcade sports games are so great, what the heck happened to all those developers of the past? And the answer is far more obvious than I ever could have expected. With Midway Games out of the picture, and even Tony Hawk Pro Skater developer Neversoft being shuttered, the genres was anyone's to take. But with open world games dominating progressive generations, it seems developers were unsure how to make sports games feel big. One major exception was Nintendo. They were one of the few major players to pick up the slack, including one of my favorite series, Super Mario Strikers. But even they sacrificed the genre. When Wii Sports came out, it showcased the new features of motion control at the cost of traditional movement. Around this time, sports games began to drift away from the controller and over to the PlayStation Move and Connect. But when the motion control craze ended, so too did arcade sports games. Not everywhere, mind you. Super Mega Baseball might not be my cup of tea, but it has its own passionate fan base. And yeah, it's more of an old school approach, but it's keeping the flame alive. Rematch took the obvious yet extremely complicated task of taking a sport and putting it into a video game. Not a simulation, a video game. Like Pong to boxing, Slow Clap translated the numerous factors and athlete experiences to the most popular and modern user interfaces of this generation. And if the experiences I've had online are any indication, yes, they're still working on crossplay and servers. I think Slow Clap has one heck of a sleeper hit on their hands. Their feet. Because even now, as I'm talking to you, I'm itching to get back to the field. And if you happen to see me out there, just remember, we got this. Anyway, that's gonna do it for this video. Have you played Rematch? Am I being too generous? Or do you see the potential here too? And what's your favorite arcade sports game of all time? Keep clicking around here at Game Rant, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.